You made one bad pitch. It was a mistake.
Pros don't choke. I choked, Mom.
Loni Anderson kept quiet about her rocky relationship with Burt Reynolds for over 20 years. Now, at 79, she's finally breaking her silence and revealing what really went on behind the scenes of one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances. The truth is far more complicated than the headlines ever showed. Join us as we explore Loni's story and uncover the secrets she's been holding back all these years. A Minnesota girl. Loni Anderson was born on August 5, 1945, in St. Paul, Minnesota. Her early life was quiet and simple. Her father, Clayton Carl Andy Anderson, worked as a school environmental chemist. Her mother, Maxine Hazel, had once been a model. Growing up in this modest household, Loni always had big dreams. Even as a young girl, she wanted to be in the spotlight. She wasn't chasing fame just for attention. She loved performing. Acting gave her a sense of purpose, and she knew from a young age that she wanted to become an actress. But like many young girls with big Hollywood dreams, Loni's road to success wasn't easy. She wasn't from California. She didn't have industry connections. She had to work hard for every opportunity. After high school, she attended the University of Minnesota, where she studied art. At the same time, she began acting in local theater productions. These early performances helped her develop her skills and gave her the confidence to chase her dreams more seriously. In those days, looks mattered a lot in Hollywood, and for actresses, there was a very specific mold producers were looking for. Loni was a brunette at the time, and despite her talent, she kept hitting roadblocks. She realized she wasn't getting the roles she wanted. It wasn't fair, but it was real. At one point, she made a bold decision. She dyed her hair blonde. That one change suddenly made Hollywood take notice. It opened doors that had been closed before. The truth was, the industry responded more to a blonde bombshell look, and Loni understood that playing the game was sometimes necessary to get ahead. Soon, she started getting roles in popular TV shows. Some of her early appearances included guest spots on Policewoman and Barnaby Jones. These roles weren't huge, but they were important. They got her foot in the door. Each role was a small step toward something bigger. She was building her resume, proving that she wasn't just a pretty face. She could act. Her big break came in 1978, when she was cast as Jennifer Marlowe in the hit sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Jennifer was the receptionist at the radio station, and at first glance, the role could have easily been another one-dimensional blonde secretary stereotype. But Loni wasn't going to let that happen. She made sure Jennifer was more than just eye candy. She gave her character depth, intelligence, and strength. Jennifer was smart, confident, and always one step ahead of the men around her. During this time, sexism in Hollywood was still very common. Many female characters were written as sidekicks, love interests, or comic relief. Loni pushed back against this. She fought for better writing and more respect for her character. She knew that Jennifer Marlowe had the potential to be a role model, not just a fantasy. Viewers noticed the difference. Women appreciated seeing a female character who was in control and unapologetically smart. WKRP in Cincinnati became a major success, and Loni Anderson became a household name. She was now one of the most recognizable faces on television. The media often focused on her looks, but her fans knew she had earned her success through talent and determination. Loni had made it in Hollywood, and she had done it her way. But while her career was on the rise, her personal life was about to enter a very public and dramatic chapter, one that would involve love, scandal, and heartbreak with one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The man behind the mustache. Burt Reynolds was born on February 11, 1936, in Lansing, Michigan. He had a very different path from Loni. Growing up, his dream wasn't to be a movie star. He wanted to play football. He had the talent, the drive, and the physical presence for it. He earned a football scholarship to Florida State University and was seen as a rising star in college athletics. But fate had other plans. A serious knee injury during his sophomore year shattered his dream of playing professionally. That injury changed everything. Burt had to find a new path in life. He turned to acting, first in college theater and later in New York. At first, acting was just something he did to stay busy, but over time, it became his new passion. In the 1960s, he began to get roles in television westerns like Gunsmoke and Dan August. He was charming, good-looking, and had a tough guy image that people liked. His career moved slowly, but steadily. Then came Deliverance in 1972. The film was a major hit and showed that Burt Reynolds wasn't just a TV actor, he had real talent and could carry a dramatic role. The movie was intense, and his performance got a lot of attention. It marked a turning point in his career. After that, the roles started getting bigger and better. His real explosion into superstardom came with the 1977 action comedy Smokey and the Bandit. Burt played the fast-talking, smooth-driving bandit, and audiences loved him. The film was a box office smash, and Burt became one of the most in-demand actors in Hollywood. For a few years, he was the #1 box office draw in America. He starred in a series of hits, including The Cannonball Run, The Longest Yard, and Hooper. He was everywhere. Movies, TV, magazines. He even posed nude for Cosmopolitan, which became a cultural moment of its own. Burt's public image was that of the perfect man's man. He was confident, funny, and charming. Women adored him, and men wanted to be like him. He had that signature mustache, a southern swagger, and a smile that seemed to win over just about anyone. But there was another side to Burt that few people saw. Behind the charm was a man who struggled with insecurities and pain. He had grown up in a strict household with a demanding father. That pressure followed him into adulthood. He cared deeply about what people thought of him, even if he didn't show it. He once admitted that his tough guy act was just that, an act. Despite his success, Burt often made choices that hurt his career. He turned down major roles, including One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Die Hard, decisions he later regretted. He also had a hard time with relationships. His romances were often passionate but turbulent. One of the most talked about was with actress Sally Field, who he later called the love of his life. Their relationship ended badly, and Burt carried that regret with him for years. Even with all the success, money, and fame, Burt Reynolds was not at peace. He had moments of brilliance and joy, but also deep sadness and personal struggles. He often pushed people away, including those who cared about him the most. He knew how to make a room laugh, but he also knew how to make people cry. And when Loni Anderson entered his life, she stepped into this complicated world. It was the beginning of one of Hollywood's most unforgettable love stories, one filled with passion, pain, and secrets that stayed hidden for years. A Hollywood collision. In 1983, Burt Reynolds was already a major Hollywood star. He had built a reputation as one of the most bankable leading men in the business. His films made millions, and his charm made headlines. Loni Anderson was also a household name by then. Thanks to her role on WKRP in Cincinnati, she was recognized across the country for her beauty, talent, and poise. So when the two were cast together in the movie Stroker Ace, it felt like something big was about to happen, and it did. The chemistry between Burt and Loni was obvious right away. On the set of Stroker Ace, they shared scenes, but more than that, they shared laughs, long conversations, and a mutual curiosity. People who worked on the film said the attraction was electric. They weren't just two attractive people working together. They were two strong personalities with a spark that couldn't be ignored. What drew them together wasn't just looks. Burt had a magnetic personality. He was confident, funny, and knew how to take control of a room. Loni, on the other hand, was elegant and smart. She wasn't intimidated by him, which made her stand out. She could hold her own in any conversation, and Burt liked that. There was also a sense of power between them. They were equals in many ways, both successful, both admired, both used to being the center of attention. Together, they made each other feel even more important. Their romance moved quickly. It didn't take long for their off-screen relationship to become as talked about as any Hollywood love story. The media went wild. Tabloids couldn't get enough of them. Magazine covers called them Hollywood's golden couple. Fans were fascinated by this pairing. It was like watching a real-life fairy tale unfold in front of them. As their relationship became more serious, Burt and Loni embraced the spotlight. They attended red carpet events together, smiling for photographers. Their pictures were everywhere. People loved to see them together. They looked happy, glamorous, and perfectly in sync. In the eyes of the public, they were the definition of Hollywood love. In 1988, they got married in a private ceremony in Florida. It was one of the most talked-about weddings of the year. That same year, they made a life-changing decision. They adopted a son, Quentin. It was a step that showed the world they were ready to build a family. For many fans, this confirmed that Burt and Loni weren't just another celebrity couple, they were a real family, grounded and full of love. They worked hard to protect that image. Interviews showed them talking lovingly about each other. Family photos were carefully shared with the press.
I don't hate Mr. Wells. I used to. I did for a long time.
Every detail of their public life was managed to support the idea that they had it all: fame, fortune, and a happy home. And for a while, it worked. People believed in the dream. They saw Burt and Loni as a couple who had found balance between work and family. But behind closed doors, things were more complicated. Fame can add pressure to any relationship, and in their case, it did. Burt was dealing with health problems and career stress. He had also started to lose some of his once strong grip on the box office. Loni was still ambitious and independent. She had her own goals and wanted her own space to grow. These differences slowly started to show. They had created the perfect picture, but now it was getting harder to keep the frame from falling apart. The glamour cracks. When Burt Reynolds and Loni Anderson got together, they seemed like the perfect Hollywood couple. They were beautiful, successful, and always smiling for the cameras. But as time passed, the reality behind those pictures started to tell a much different story. Life behind closed doors wasn't filled with red carpets and happy endings. It was often tense, emotional, and overwhelming. Being famous sounds exciting, but it also brings a lot of stress. Burt and Loni were constantly followed by photographers. Everything they did made headlines, whether it was a public appearance or a private moment taken out of context. It didn't matter if they were having a normal disagreement or a quiet day at home. The media was always watching, always ready to make a story out of their lives. The pressure to look perfect and happy all the time was exhausting. Loni later admitted that she often felt like she was living two lives: the real her and the version of her the tabloids created. She once said, "I used to tell my daughter, there's the me at home, and then there's the tabloid me." The tabloid me was someone I didn't even recognize. At the same time, Burt's personal struggles were starting to show. Known for his charm and sense of humor, there was also a darker side to him that few people saw. He could be controlling, moody, and difficult. Friends and insiders have talked about his need to be in charge, both in his career and in his personal life. That control often extended to his relationship with Loni. Loni, who had built her own career and fought hard to be taken seriously in Hollywood, found herself shrinking in the shadow of Burt's fame. At first, she thought they could support each other as equals, but as time went on, she started to feel like her voice was getting quieter, her choices more limited. She didn't feel like herself anymore. "I felt myself fading into just being Burt Reynolds' wife," she later shared. That one sentence says a lot. Loni wasn't just losing control of her public image, she was losing her sense of who she was. It's a feeling that can be incredibly lonely, especially for someone who had always worked hard to stand on her own. Even though Burt loved her, his actions didn't always show it. His temper could be sharp, and their arguments could be intense. There were times when Loni felt scared and unsure of what would come next, and all the while, they kept smiling in public, pretending everything was fine. They had built a life that looked perfect from the outside, but on the inside, it was falling apart. Fame didn't protect them from problems. It made them worse. The addiction spiral. In 1984, Burt Reynolds suffered a serious injury while filming the action comedy City Heat. A stunt went terribly wrong, and Burt was left with a shattered jaw. The accident was painful, both physically and emotionally. At first, doctors prescribed medication to help manage that pain, strong prescription painkillers. But what started as medical treatment quickly became something more dangerous. Burt began relying on those pills not just for the physical pain, but also for emotional escape. Acting was demanding, and being one of the biggest stars in the world brought intense pressure. The painkillers became a way for him to cope with everything. Over time, though, his body became dependent. What was supposed to help him recover ended up pulling him deeper into addiction. Loni Anderson, by then his wife, had a front-row seat to this dark chapter. She watched as the man she loved began to change. The charming, lively Burt that people saw on TV and in movies was slowly disappearing. At home, she saw someone tired, irritable, and often distant. The sparkle in his eyes began to fade, and the addiction started to take over. She tried to help. She stood by him, hoping he would find the strength to fight through it. But addiction is powerful. It doesn't just affect the person using the drugs, it affects everyone around them. Loni later spoke about how helpless she felt during that time. No matter what she did, it seemed like nothing could reach him. She watched him take pill after pill, trying to numb the pain he was feeling. Sometimes he would get better for a while, but then the cycle would start all over again. There were nights that were especially terrifying. Burt's health was declining, and Loni feared the worst. There were moments when she truly didn't know if he would survive the night. He was thin, weak, and looked nothing like the strong, confident man the public remembered. Rumors started to spread in the media. People whispered about Burt's appearance, wondering what was wrong. But only those closest to him, like Loni, knew just how bad it really was. Eventually, Loni came to a painful realization. As much as she loved Burt, she couldn't fix what was happening. She once said, "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." It was a hard truth. She wanted to help him, but he had to want that help for himself. That's one of the cruel realities of addiction. It often takes more than love to overcome it. Their relationship was already under strain, and Burt's addiction added another heavy burden. For Loni, it wasn't just about watching someone she cared about struggle. It was also about protecting herself and their son from being pulled under, too. With their world slowly crumbling, the next blow would come in the most public way possible: accusations and betrayal. By the early 1990s, the cracks in Loni Anderson and Burt Reynolds' marriage were no longer hidden behind the walls of their home. The arguments became constant. What once felt like a partnership full of love and laughter had turned into a storm of emotional chaos. The passion that brought them together was now the same force that tore them apart. Their conversations, once playful and warm, were now tense, angry, and full of blame. There were many reasons their marriage began to fall apart: the addiction, the fame, the pressure from the outside world. Everything played a part. But what hurt the most were the growing feelings of resentment and misunderstanding between the two. Loni began to feel completely alone, despite sharing a house with one of Hollywood's biggest stars. She had tried for years to hold on, to make things work, but nothing seemed to change. Burt's accusations and the tabloid war. As their relationship broke down in private, the public side of it exploded. The tabloids began circling like vultures. Rumors of betrayal, jealousy, and infidelity became headline news. Stories painted a picture of a once golden couple crumbling under fame and personal failure. The press followed them everywhere, waiting for the next argument or scandal to spill out. Then came the most painful part of all: Burt's public accusations. In interviews and statements, he began lashing out at Loni. He accused her of being cold and manipulative, and even labeled her a gold digger. He claimed she had married him for money and status, and that she had betrayed him. The media loved it. These headlines sold magazines, and the public couldn't look away. Loni, on the other hand, chose not to fight back publicly. At the time, she stayed mostly silent, refusing to engage in a media war. But inside, she was devastated. She had loved Burt. She had stood by him during his addiction and had tried to protect their family. Hearing him paint her as the villain in front of the world was heartbreaking. The divorce process became one of the most talked about celebrity splits of the decade. Fans were confused. Hadn't they been the perfect couple? Weren't they raising a child together? How did things fall apart so quickly and so publicly? The truth was far more complicated than what the headlines showed. Behind those explosive stories were two people in deep pain, both struggling to deal with disappointment, regret, and emotional wounds that hadn't healed. Loni later said that she felt like there were two versions of her, the real Loni and the one the tabloids created. That tabloid Loni was a stranger to her, and yet that was the version the world believed. The 1993 divorce. By the time Loni Anderson and Burt Reynolds officially separated in 1993, their relationship had already been torn apart in the eyes of the public. But the actual divorce was even more explosive than the headlines that had been building for years. What started as a glamorous Hollywood romance ended in a courtroom with bitter accusations, legal battles, and an emotional toll that neither of them could have fully prepared for. The divorce quickly turned into a high-profile disaster. The legal process was filled with tension and disagreement, especially over custody issues involving their adopted son, Quentin. Both Loni and Burt wanted what was best for him, but their fight over custody became another reason for media attention. What should have been a private family matter played out under the harsh spotlight of cameras and reporters. Loni tried to stay focused on protecting her son and keeping things as stable as possible for him. But the chaos around her made that incredibly difficult. The press followed her every move, waiting for her to crack or make a mistake. While both stars were facing scrutiny, it was Loni who took the brunt of the public criticism. Many media outlets chose to frame her as the villain in the story. Even though Burt had his own issues, including a well-known struggle with addiction and emotional instability, the public often gave him the benefit of the doubt. His charm and long-standing popularity with audiences seemed to protect him from the full weight of public judgment. Meanwhile, Loni was portrayed as calculating and cold. Some stories even painted her as a social climber who used Burt to boost her own fame. Through it all, Loni remained mostly silent. She didn't lash out or fight back in the media. She didn't respond to every false rumor or harsh headline. Instead, she focused on taking care of herself and her son. Years later, she would explain her choice to stay quiet by saying, "The tabloid me was someone I didn't even recognize." The person described in the magazines wasn't who she really was. It was a version of her created by gossip, assumptions, and anger. The divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was a turning point. It marked the moment when Loni stopped being part of a power couple and had to reclaim her identity on her own. An unexpected dinner. Years had passed since the stormy end of Loni Anderson and Burt Reynolds' marriage. Their names still appeared together in gossip columns and old tabloid stories, but their lives had gone in different directions. Then, something unexpected happened. A quiet dinner that brought the two back to the same table. It wasn't a romantic reunion or a dramatic showdown. It was a simple, human moment shared between two people who had once loved each other deeply and now had one very important thing in common: their son, Quentin. The dinner took place long after the divorce drama had cooled. By then, the media had mostly moved on, and both Loni and Burt had settled into different stages of their lives. Loni was focused on raising Quentin and continuing her acting work, And Burt had been through ups and downs, including a surprising late career comeback. Their relationship, once defined by public fights and courtrooms, had softened into something more mature and quiet. Loni later said that the dinner happened because they both wanted to be present for Quentin. They knew that even though they hadn't stayed together as a couple, they still shared the responsibility of being his parents. Sitting down at the same table, eating together, and showing unity, even in a small way, meant a lot to their son, and it meant something to them, too. "We were friends first," Loni explained in an interview. That simple sentence carried years of emotion. Before the fame, the fights, and the fallout, there had been friendship. They had laughed together, supported each other's careers, and shared private dreams before it all got so complicated. That friendship, while battered, had not been completely destroyed. The dinner didn't erase the past. It didn't undo the pain, the betrayal, or the public wounds. But it brought a kind of peace. They both understood, perhaps more than ever, what they had gone through. There was no full forgiveness, no dramatic apologies, just a quiet acknowledgement of the good and the bad, and a shared love for their son. It was a grown-up kind of closure, not perfect, but real. Loni finally speaks out. For decades, Loni Anderson kept her silence. While tabloids screamed accusations and reporters chased rumors, she stayed mostly quiet. She didn't write a tell-all book. She didn't fire back at Burt Reynolds in interviews. She let people say what they wanted, even when it hurt. But everything changed in 2018, when Burt passed away. His death brought a flood of memories for Loni. They had shared 12 years of life together, including a marriage, a child, and a home. Despite everything, there had been love. But now, with him gone, Loni felt it was finally time to speak honestly. Not to attack him, but to tell her own story. To talk about what she had really experienced, not just what people assumed. In interviews following Burt's death, Loni began to open up. She spoke with emotion and care, not bitterness. She talked about the charm that first drew her in and how it slowly gave way to fear and heartbreak. She talked about the public image of their romance, beautiful clothes, red carpet events, a glamorous lifestyle, and how different it was from what happened behind closed doors. She revealed how terrifying it was to watch someone she loved spiral into addiction, how helpless she felt when Burt became dependent on painkillers after a serious jaw injury in 1984. The man who had once been so full of energy and humor became unpredictable and angry. She tried to help him, to be there for him, but it was never enough. "Love isn't always enough to save someone from themselves," she said quietly. That one sentence carried the weight of years. She had tried to hold on to their marriage, but she couldn't fight his demons for him. And in the end, that realization broke her heart. Speaking out didn't mean she wanted revenge. Loni didn't share her story to get attention or stir up old drama. She shared it because it was her truth. Because for too long, only one side had been heard. And because, after all these years, she had finally found the strength to reclaim her voice. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the bell so you never miss a Hollywood story.